Recruiter Nation, thank you so much for tuning in today. We have an amazing guest for you today in Steve. Has the #1 book on Amazon in recruiting, has since started mentoring and teaching recruiters. Book is sold over 40 countries, just an absolute wealth of information. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to start with kind of what your journey has been, a little bit about you so that people that are watching can get a sense for who you are and kind of what your journey's been. And then we're going to dive into your lengthy expertise.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, welcome and thanks for inviting me. I would say my journey really has started probably not from almost a recruitment perspective. I was the quiet, unassuming character that probably lacked that element of confidence and that self-belief. And I was a strategic commodity buyer by background. I was very much about negotiation, spreadsheets, process, procedure. My wife at the time was recruiting. She was doing particularly well. And I was seeing what sort of levels of money she was earning. I was getting a pat on the back for dealing with multi-million-pound frameworks and given the next contract. And I sat there and thought, I could do that. And I went for an interview to go and work for a purchasing and supply recruitment agency. And first interview went brilliantly. Asked me to play in their five-a-side football team after my second interview. I thought, happy days, I've got this, I've got the job. Went for my second interview and the feedback was I wasn't confident enough, wasn't salesy enough, didn't really fit the profile of a recruiter. They didn't think I'd fit in with the office. So I didn't get offered the position. And I was devastated, to be honest. I was used to getting offered roles and positions. So I left the interview, and across the street from where I'd interviewed was the same brand but different division. It was the construction and property division. So I went in there and said, look, they won't take me on, and I will spend every hour of every working day proving them wrong and that they should have taken me on. And so the initial rejection became my fuel to my fire and actually propelled me into being the quickest trainee to get promoted, the quickest consultant to get promoted. I still hold the regional records as far as I believe that I set in 2007. And then obviously I started my career in recruitment. That was about 15 years ago.
I hear from that like a really unique approach. So what I really got out of that was like your mindset really matters. So that rejection hurt, right? Like, but you didn't let that take you down. Instead, you were like, okay, let me go find something different and let me like really go all in.
Yeah, I think it's a really fair statement because it pushed me to levels I probably didn't even know I had, because I was always used to getting offered the position. I was always used to be able to kind of negotiate my way into positions. And I wasn't used to it. But I think what I noticed when I certainly started recruiting was there was lots of pain points. There was lots of issues. Certainly in the UK, recruiters aren't seen as an extension of a brand. It's almost, if nothing else works, we'll go and use a recruitment agency. And it's quite different over here. You have to fight for absolutely everything. And what I realised was the service levels within the UK were reasonably bad. The turnover of recruiters in the UK for a consultant is about 6 months. So they don't last long. So the continuity of service to clients and candidates is quite poor because they're constantly speaking to a new recruiter. So I could sit there and think, okay, well, just simplifying the process and actually delivering upon what I say I'm going to deliver on actually sets me aside from most of the competition. Just to the basics of, if I'm going to call you on Thursday at 4 o'clock, I'll call you on Thursday at 4 o'clock. There was no hidden agenda. There was no ulterior motive. If I can't deliver on something, I'll tell you I can't deliver. And what I was finding was, because I don't know whether it's a British thing, but we don't like to offend. We don't like to upset. So we will say things that we think the client or candidate wants to hear, and actually knowing full well we can't deliver. But we don't want to upset them at the time of saying something. And that was my competition. So it was very simple just to say, do you know what? I'm just going to deliver on everything I say I'm going to deliver on. And if I can get that to be really consistent, and I can start working in a very process procedural way, which is how my brain functions anyway, actually it sets me apart from everybody else.
I want to just like hone in on this. So like what I really just heard from you was honesty and authenticity. And that is so key in terms of building long-term relationships, in terms of having clients and candidates trust you. Like that is just so key. So it's like you took that real, like, of course it's uncomfortable to say the truth sometimes. Like we've all been there. We've all faced a moment where we're like, oh, but what I'm really hearing is that's key. That's like, so, and then you combine that with this natural inclination you had towards processes. So I'm super curious about some of these processes.
Yeah. Okay. So if I take it back to when I was a buyer, so I would sit in rooms with salespeople every day of the week, and I would get frustrated because I would be told things that couldn't be delivered or weren't met, or I would book in calls or meetings and they were late or they wouldn't follow up. And all I took really was their frustrations and then put them into practice in terms of the opposite side of the desk. But then in terms of process, because I like things in a certain way and always have done, even as a child, I like to go to the same coffee place, get my coffee of a morning. It's almost really habitual. And I mean, my wife will tell you, if she asks me to do something at 8 o'clock in the morning when I've already got my day planned, all hell breaks loose. And I've got to kind of bring it back down and realize, actually, just going and putting something out in the back garden is not a big issue. It's just, I have a set way of working and a set routine. It's got its perfect advantages and it does have its disadvantages at times. But what it meant was I went into every month, every week and every day with a set focus and set clarity of how I was going to work and how I was going to achieve my targets. And I worked very much in a way that the month target would probably be just a financial target. So what have I got to achieve in terms of billings and placements? And then I would break it down over a 4 or 5 week period and then break it down further into days. And what I could do then was focus on the front end of recruitment. So how many calls, how many CVs out, how many interviews, working on that on a basis of each week. If I could get the front end right, the placement fees and everything else take care of itself because you've done enough of the upfront stuff. And I think what I've realized, having been in recruitment now for 15 years, so many recruiters focus on the financial side and the end result and actually don't put the bits in place at the start, which means they're panicking all the time or very reactive to try and hit the numbers each month. Whereas actually, if you just focused on the front bit, you'd hit the figures anyway, if not beat the figures.
Yeah, I really want to echo this back and make sure this lands for everyone listening, that when you have an outcome and a goal and you've broken it down to the inputs, at that point, your daily focus is the inputs, making sure that you hit your inputs so that you actually get the result that you want on the back end.
Yeah.
So
yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Make and sure if you understand the inputs and they become measurable, you can then start to make the incremental 1% changes that actually make you deliver more and better and more efficiently to achieve higher results.
Yeah, let's dive in more because there's so much more to go into here. So, you know, in your journey, you get to a place where you're a very successful recruiter and you have this awesome book that you've written and this awesome mentorship program that you do. So walk us through kind of what that journey looks like, moving from, you know, really being successful in it to now moving into, you know, teaching and mentoring.
Yeah. Okay. If I kind of tell the story where it was born out of. So I've recruited for 15 years. I built 2 regions for 11 of those and I had 19 staff. I grew it to a turnover of 7 million. And I left about 12 months ago to go on a different route. 6 months I took out just to go back to basic recruiting for myself. And the plan was after 6 months, I was going to either open a new recruitment agency and build it fresh from scratch, or go into third-party consulting, mentoring. At the end of that 6 months was when COVID hit in the UK, so end of March. So it left me with I suppose, a decision to make. How do I go about kind of acting on what I'd set out? So second week of April of this year, I actually put a post out on LinkedIn just saying there's lots of recruiters on furlough, there's lots out of work, lots struggling or feeling insecure or worried about their future. I'm going to clear out my diary next week. If you want to have a conversation, if you want to have a chat, a rant, a cuddle, whatever it is that you need, book in next week via Zoom and we'll have a 30-minute discussion. And if I'm honest, I thought I would probably get 10, 12 people book in, and it would be friends, it would be people that knew me, and they'd book in for a chat and a catch up. It ended up being 62 people, and it was global. It was New Zealand, US, Canada, Singapore, Switzerland, South Africa, obviously the UK, and across Europe. And what I realised at the end of that point was all the issues, all the hurdles, all the struggles recruiters go through are the same regardless of where you are. All the questions were the same. And that led me on to the fact that I could do something on a much bigger scale. So I spent 8-10 weeks building what is now called the 12-week recruitment mastery program. And it's a step-by-step walkthrough of my 15 years, really, because I'm such a detailed person. I've documented everything for 15 years. So I could build something that is so detailed and process procedure heavy that people can go through it as an experienced recruiter and as a beginner, and they will still gain value. First program launched end of June. All the recruiters have paid back their investment. They've all done exceptionally well. And it's global. I'm speaking to recruiters, as I say, around the world, and they're all getting involved. And a lot of it has come from the book, because the book is a story about how I proved the doubters wrong and was able to recruit successfully by actually just implementing structure, process, and procedure.
Wow. That's huge. Number one, that's hats off. Like that's brilliant all the way around, documenting the entire thing, writing everything you've learned, and then turning into a living program. Tell me, is there a typical type of recruiter that you work with, or, are they trying to launch their own? Have they already launched? Are they working inside another? Kind of, share with me a little bit about, I don't want to say typical, but you know what I mean? Kind of just a consensus of who you're working with, and, maybe some of the common challenges or common goals that you're working with them towards.
Okay. When my initial idea for the program was actually to empower the individual. So I aimed it at the consultant themselves. I don't know whether it's the same in the US, but in the UK, recruiters don't pay for their own training. The businesses or the company will generally pay. And what you get a different type of person in the training. Certainly the recruiters that I've managed and mentored previous that have gone through company training, it's that kind of, I've got so many calls to make, I haven't got time for training, I don't really want to be there. Their levels of engagement are relatively low. Mm-hmm. If you spend your own money and you invest in yourself to do the training, you are more engaged and you're more likely to pay attention and learn. And that's where I wanted it. I wanted to get the individuals that are motivated, ambitious, and that is how it's worked. So within the program, I've got people that haven't yet started recruitment. I've got one at the moment that's due to launch in January. Has never worked in recruitment before, and is using this as a foundation to then set up a new recruitment agency and go from day one. I've got somebody in the group at the moment that's been recruiting for 13 years. And in week 3, they've already said how amazed they are at the amount of value, and they can't believe they've gone 13 years without knowing the strategies and everything else that I've put in place. We've got a really good mix. We've got people that work for themselves. We've got people that work for small, medium-sized recruitment agencies. And we've got a few that work for the big global corporate agencies.
Got it.
And the feedback has been really positive throughout. But I've made a particular point of, you don't get on the program without filling out an application form and having a strategy call with me first, because I want to understand that the right people are in the program and actually they will benefit as much as the program will.
Mm-hmm. That makes absolute total sense, because you're really looking for motivated people who are willing to actually learn, right, and implement. And I'm wondering if we could have like an insider glance into it, or like a tip, or like one of the things that you dive deeper into, just so folks kind of get an idea, because you're really talking about strategies, you're talking about how to really improve processes and procedures, all the things that you have learned over your entire career, implemented on, and now are successfully training others in. Is there one you could share with that you feel like would be key?
For me, the two key areas in this current time, obviously I would always say structure. I would say most recruiters are flamboyant, relationship building.
What? Steve, excuse me.
These are all positive points.
Sounds so familiar. Todd, you too?
They are outwardly spoken, confident, comfortable people in a room with individuals, and they can talk about what they do and what value they can bring. But in my experience, a lot of recruiters that are good at that bit leave a trail of destruction behind them, or they're so reactive, they just go from whatever comes in on any given day. And actually, by giving them a set purpose each week to work to and some clarity, actually they become more successful because they can multitask as they've got that focus. Another key area at the moment is personal branding. It's huge. I mean, I come from a traditional old school recruiting background where there's the phone book, go and make some calls and make us some money. And that's it. And it was about activity. It was about call levels. Now it's about utilizing social media and the technological advances that can add to the activity and enhance and complement everything else you do. So personal branding, the ability to document your journey as you go, that actually when you come to talking to clients and candidates, they already know you because they see what marketing you do, talking about what you do as a recruiter. So I talk through, certainly for me, LinkedIn is probably my strongest platform. And it's about making sure that, if I give you an example, a couple of years ago, I did my first social media video. And it had taken me about 12 months to pick up the courage to do it.
Absolutely. And isn't it so awkward? The first one, you're like,
oh, they're horrible.
Yeah.
And I think you prejudge what everybody's going to say about you. And you just don't want to put yourself in the limelight to be ridiculed. And I did this video. I drove for 2 hours. I was up at 5:30 in the morning, drove for 2 hours to get to an office. I was listening to Gary Vee and Crush It on the radio. I got out of my car, did the video, and it was rubbish, to be honest. There's no content or value in this video. It's just me getting over a personal hurdle. Here I am. Give me your worst. And then somebody put in the comments, now you can do 10 videos in 10 days. Accept the challenge. And I put, yes, okay, accepted. And then thought, 10 videos in 10 days. I did it. And the videos were all about how to deal with rejection, how to stay motivated, how to deal with haters. Do you need a mentor? Do you need that support network? It was things that affected me. And I was doing these videos, and my consultants were going out on meetings with their clients who I didn't know. And they were talking about me and my videos to my consultants. They were coming back to the office and saying, Steve, can you stop doing these videos? I went there to sell me, and they're talking about you. But behind the scenes, I was getting clients and candidates contact me and say, I've just seen your video. We haven't spoke for a few years. We're looking for a surveyor. Or candidates coming up saying, seen your videos. We haven't spoke for 4 or 5 years. I'm now looking for work again. And it actually just propelled my personal brand to a whole new level. And I think as recruiters, I don't know whether you feel the same, but when you put something out on social media, we don't tend to welcome engagement because candidates don't necessarily want to tell people they're looking. and clients don't want to advertise that they're looking to fill an opportunity. So most of it goes on behind closed doors. But the fact that you're constantly and consistently repeating your information out there, you just get better known. So you become the recruiter for the markets that you deal with. Does that make sense?
It does. And like, here's something really interesting. One of the things I'm like really getting clarity on around like how you operate is that you face challenges head on. And like that is such a key aspect of a personality that works really well, because let's be really honest, there's a lot of rejection in recruiting. There are a lot of people who say no to you. There are people who email me back and just write unsubscribe. And I'm like, I personally found your email and like this, I'm like, this is not a mailing list. Like I sometimes am like, there's a human over here, you know? And it's, if you don't have that grit, that capacity to say, I actually celebrate a no. I celebrate a no. And the reason I choose to do that is because, oh, cool, it got a response. I got you engaged enough to say no. And the other part that I'm really hearing from this is you took a really brave risk, like putting yourself out video wise. And it suddenly, just as I was listening to you, I'm like, you know, so often, like, I mean, I'll be really honest. I work remote. I work from home. I look like a mess 95% of the time, you know, like I got a baseball hat on, I'm working, and it's like, who cares what I look like? I mean, yes, you guys, that y'all know I don't wear this all the time. But like, seriously, like put the video out, share the content. You never know what's going to happen from taking that risk.
You know what I've realized over time? So I would say my early days, I've always been an accurate person, and I always wanted things to be perfect. And I would be the one that didn't put something out because I wasn't quite happy with something. And I've got to the point now where if I'm 75% of the way there, then it just goes. I used to spend hours creating what I thought were valuable content or valuable posts, and they would go nowhere and they'd get no engagement. And I'm sat there thinking, but I spent hours doing that. Why has nobody commented? And then I put something out with no thought at all, and it suddenly gets hundreds of thousands of views. And what I've come to learn is you just got to put no onus on what the post does. You've just got to be consistent in your approach, and it will do whatever it chooses to do. But ultimately, if you keep turning up, you keep getting seen, and you become the person that people go to, and you get to that key person of influence level.
This is really important. I want to make sure, and I just want to echo it back for the people that are listening, that it's really hard to guess what is and isn't going to work, and the commitment to showing up and continuing to put the energy and effort in, and not focusing so much on how many likes did it get, how many comments did it get, not waiting for it to be perfect, not waiting for it to be 99.99% perfectly done. Just commit to showing up, putting your best in, and just keep it moving forward. And some of them are going to be stinkers, and some of them are just going to knock it out of home park. And I just want to echo back what you're sharing.
And I think the main point there is, we as people that put the posts out don't get to choose what's of value and what's not. The audience will decide that for you. I think it's just the fact that you've got to put it out and see where it goes.
Is there, just because I'm curious, is there one that you did that you were like, nobody's going to care about this, and then just did amazing?
I think my most, I don't know whether you class it as viral, the post that's got the most interaction was a couple of years ago, and we just had Christmas jumpers on. And I think there was us in the office with our Christmas jumpers on, and I put down, I think it was 5 or 6 excuses that temps had given for not turning up for work. I mean, one of the best ones I've ever had was a senior level candidate that he'd been on 2 interviews. It'd gone really well. 3rd interview was with a board of directors, and he'd emailed on the morning saying, I'm not going to be able to attend my interview. I've had a really bad nosebleed while walking the dog. His interview was at like 3 o'clock. The email was about 9 a.m. So I'd rang and said, that's a bad nosebleed.
That's a bad nosebleed.
Like, I can't even, are you gushing? Like full blown hemorrhaging? You're going to the ER? Like,
The doctor said he couldn't drive and therefore couldn't get there. So I said, okay, I'll come and pick you up.
Yeah. What about an Uber or a Lyft
I'll pick you up.
Calling a friend?
He was like, yeah, the role's probably not for me. I was like, say that. Come on. Anyway, we listed the things. I think it ended up with something like 120,000 views.
Wow.
And then other recruiters were coming in with their best excuses, and it just kept going.
It is kind of funny if you just take a moment and look at some of the excuses we've had. Like, I'm so sorry. You guys can just be honest with us. If you don't like the job, that is beyond okay with us.
Yeah.
Just tell us.
Yeah. I would rather that.
I know, me too. I'm like, and I try to make it as comfortable as possible for them to say, I don't want this. You know, my favorite is like, I've just straight up been ghosted. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. All right.
I know. The only thing worse recruiting is dating. It's just so much rejection and ghosting on both of them. Let me ask you, Steve. You wrote Top Biller. What are kind of what is that book about? What do you kind of cover in that, or what are the key points so that people listening know that is available on Amazon? So just share a little bit about that if you could.
Okay, so Top Biller came out of the fact that I wasn't your typical recruiter. And I wanted to write about the fact that actually, if you're the quiet, unassuming person that sits at the back of the room, doesn't jump in with 2 feet, doesn't do the high-fiving and ring the bell every time a deal's done, actually, you just keep going doing what you do, you can be a really successful recruiter. And I think because I was rejected at the start for the way that I am and my character traits and just the way that I conduct myself, I wanted to show that other recruiters can do exactly the same. And my view with the book, so it took about 18 months to write with a bit of a 6-month gap where work took over. The plan for the book actually was just to become the business card. And in effect, when I wrote it, I was thinking clients and candidates would see me as the recruiter that wrote the book. And what's happened is, because I wanted to make the book relatable and I didn't want it to be, I suppose, like a textbook, I wanted to talk about the stories of just going through a process and procedure and having the right motivators, the right reasons why you're doing it. And actually you work in an honest way, you're ethical, you're hardworking, and you deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. Actually, you'll just be really good at the job, and you'll be better than most recruiters out there because you're not giving a load of flannel.
So
that
good.
Makes sense. I don't know
No,
whether you
it
have.
does. It really does.
I love it. I love it.
And I know, Steve, you've got a free gift for our audience. Will you share with them what that is?
Yeah. So as I've said, I'm very structured process procedure. The free gift is a month planner. So the month planner breaks over the month, the weeks and the days, and it gives you an ability to work and then measure what you do. It's been the most requested thing of anything I've done. And certainly over the last 12 months, it's something that people seem to enjoy and want to get their hands on. So,
y'all, this is incredible. Just so first off, obviously everything Steve's really talked about, like he focuses on the long-term goal and then breaks it down. And so just imagine what's possible for you when you utilize this planner. So simply just scroll below. There's a button, click it, it'll take you straight there. And then Steve, what's the number one thing you want to leave our audience with?
I think the main thing for me is to basically deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on. If you keep that at the forefront of everything you do, there's going to be very few places where you let people down, and actually you just become better and more consistent.